If your entire life story could be told using nothing but the periodic table. No, not like your high school chemistry class where you memorized H, He, Li, B, B, C, N, O, F, Nay, and promptly forgot it after the exam. I'm talking about 21 chapters, each named after an element, argon, carbon, zinc, and each somehow managing to capture the chemistry of life itself. Now imagine you're not just a chemist, but also a Jewish man living in Italy during World War II, when being Jewish could get you sent to a concentration camp. And then chemistry is the thing that ends up saving your life. That's the story we're getting into today. Equal parts science, memoir, and survival. Our story begins with argon. Now, argon is a noble gas, invisible, unreactive, and frankly, a little antisocial. Kind of like that quiet uncle at family gatherings who sits in the corner and eats his cake without talking to anyone. For Primo Levi, argon represents his own family's place in the world before fascism reared its head, a family that quietly existed, inert, and mostly left alone. From there, we travel through the chapters like a chemist strolling across the periodic table of his own life. Primo starts as a boy fascinated by the magic of matter, the way powders fizz when they meet liquid, the way metals glint in the light. While other kids might have been building tree houses, young Primo was probably mixing things in a jar and hoping they wouldn't explode. His love for chemistry deepens when he becomes a student. He dives into university studies where life is still relatively calm. But that calm is about to dissolve faster than sodium in water. The rise of fascism and Mussolini's racial laws change everything. Suddenly, it's not about whether you can pass your exams, it's about whether your name could get you killed. But Levi pushes forward. He graduates in chemistry, works in various industrial settings, and slowly we see the pattern. This man lives through elements. Zinc isn't just zinc. It's a metaphor for purity and impurity, for the way life can resist change or transform entirely. He writes,
"The course notes contained a detail which at first reading had escaped me, namely, that so tender and delicate zinc, so yielding to acid which gulps it down in a single mouthful, behaves, however, in a very different fashion when it is pure, then it obstinately resists the attack. One could draw from this two conflicting philosophical conclusions, the praise of purity, which protects from evil like a coat of mail, the praise of impurity, which gives rise to changes, in other words, to life." Page 27 and 28.
It's chemistry as philosophy, and philosophy as survival manual. Then comes the turning point. Primo joins the fight against the fascists. He's not just a man of beakers and Bunsen burners, he becomes a partisan fighter. Unfortunately, science doesn't help much in mountain combat. He's captured and eventually sent to Auschwitz. Here, the periodic table becomes less of a metaphor and more of a lifeline. His captors discover his chemistry skills and place him in a laboratory. This is not a safe or happy situation. Auschwitz was still Auschwitz, but it keeps him alive. The fact that chemicals, formulas, and experiments shielded him from the gas chamber is one of the most haunting ironies of the book.
Yes, science!
Years later, Primo receives a letter from a former Nazi officer who had supervised his lab work during the war. This correspondence becomes another layer in the strange, twisted chemical equation that is his life. One where the human elements of guilt, memory, and morality are harder to balance than any chemical formula. From argon at the start to carbon at the end, the structure of the book mirrors the cycle of existence. Carbon is the building block of life, but also the dust we return to after death. It's Levi's way of telling us, in the end, we're all just rearrangements of the same matter. Throughout, he describes his experiences with a chemist's mind clear, precise, and full of strange beauty. Even his frustrations, the projects sabotaged by bureaucracy, the times he was underestimated, are distilled through the language of the lab. It's as if he could not separate his identity as a human being from his identity as a chemist, because for him, they were one and the same.
Yeah, Mr. White!
The book is The Periodic Table by Primo Levi, first published in 1975, translated into English by Raymond Rosenthal. A memoir told in 21 elemental chapters, it's part autobiography, part scientific meditation, and part testament to human endurance. This is not your typical war memoir. Levi doesn't just tell you, I grew up here, then this happened. Instead, he finds the right element for each phase of his life and uses its properties as a metaphor for that period. It's an incredibly creative structure. It's also, a slow, thoughtful read. If you go in expecting a straightforward narrative, you might be thrown off. But if you read it the way you might examine a rock under a magnifying glass, slowly, noticing each facet, you'll see the brilliance. What struck me most was Levi's precision with language. Whole paragraphs sparkle with exactness, whether he's talking about molten metals or the molten politics of wartime Italy. And even though chemistry is a constant presence, you don't need to be a scientist to enjoy it. The human story always comes first. I also love that Levi doesn't romanticize anything. His life as a chemist is full of small victories and big frustrations. He never pretends it's glamorous, but he makes you see its dignity. Some of the themes that stand out: identity through profession. Levi shows that being a chemist isn't just his job, it's his way of seeing the world. Science as survival. His knowledge saves his life, literally. Purity and impurity. In both a chemical and moral sense, Levi reflects on the tension between remaining uncorrupted and being transformed by contact with others. Memory and history. The book itself is an act of preservation, a way to distill experience so it can be passed on like a sample in a glass vial. Primo Levi was born in Turin, Italy in 1919. He studied chemistry at the University of Turin and worked as a chemist before and after the war. During World War II, he joined the Italian resistance but was captured and deported to Auschwitz in 1944. His survival there shaped much of his later writing, which often blends scientific precision with deep human insight. Levi wrote several books, including If This Is a Man, also known as Survival in Auschwitz, and The Periodic Table, which many consider his masterpiece. He died in 1987, leaving behind a body of work that continues to resonate across disciplines, from literature to science to history. The periodic table isn't just about elements. It's about the chemistry of being human, the bonds we form, the reactions we survive, and the transformations that define us. Whether you're a scientist, a historian, or just someone who likes a well-told life story, Levi's book reminds us that life, like chemistry, is a constant experiment. Hey, thanks so much for hanging out with me today. If you're interested in diving deeper into this book, I've left some links down in the description. You can use it to grab yourself a copy and keep the adventure going. And if you're in the mood for more great reads, don't go just yet. Click on one of the videos popping up right now that I think you'll love. And don't forget to give this review a like, leave a comment, or even subscribe if you'd like to see more. Every bit of support helps us grow this little community of book lovers. See you in the next one.